stuck
Wait.
to turn their vision
Okay.
into reality.
It was never recording. My bad. YouTube was never recording.
Okay. She also receives small business owners services small business owners by offering over 20 years of administrative experience through mentorship or serving as a virtual administrator. St. Teresa's goal in life is to remind people that no matter the delay, they can begin again. So this is a book that she had wrote. It's called Releasing My Secret, a 30-day devotional. And if you guys haven't gotten already, it's for sale in Amazon.
Amazon and direct.
Amazon and direct sales. I believe it's
15.
It's $15. So if you want to get that, please, I'm going to put the link in below, or we're going to put it in the live. We're on 2 different things today, so we'll make sure it's in there so you guys can get that. You want to tell us a little bit about your devotional, how you came up with it?
Sure. So it took me about 2 to 3 years to write the devotional. And it was just based off of, I was a part of an anthology a couple years ago, and I was like, I've been through so much, everybody just life. You just go through regular life. And I was like, well, how do you convey where you could really just help somebody instead of always just telling your sorrowful story, right? Because everybody tells their story. I think everybody writes a book and they have like this great story to tell. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with the story, but sometimes after I finish your story and hearing about your story, how can you help me, right?
Right.
Or what's the resolve? It's kind of like, okay, you complained to me about something, now what's the resolve? So that's how the devotional came about. So it doesn't necessarily speak to what I've gone through, like the preface talks about it a little bit,
Right.
to give a little background, but it actually, the devotional was written based off of the emotions that you experience when you go through a traumatic experience. And based off of that, it was like, okay, I understand that healing is not something that happens right away all the time.
Right.
So that's why it's a 30-day devotional, to support your healing process.
Wow.
Because I understand that we go through a process of healing. A lot of times it's not always, right away.
Right.
So that's why it's 30 days. So 30 days, and how it's written is, there's a devotional, there's a prayer, there's an affirmation, and there's a song that'll help you get through your day. And it's written so that you can always go back to a day. If you're dealing with anger, you can always go back to, I'm dealing with anger today, so let me deal with anger today. Or I'm dealing with anger and 2 more days later, I'm still dealing with it, so let me go back to it. Or I'm dealing with, my self-esteem, and I have, I'm dealing with that issue today, so let me deal with that, work that day. So that's kind of how it was written.
Okay.
And it was just really to help people. And I thought it was just really going to help people with, like, certain issues, but then I was getting reviews and people were like, oh, well, it helped, with postpartum, it's helped with marital issues. So, you just never know what kind of platform.
That's great. And as I'm looking through it right now, it also, you have the topic, you have scriptural references that, can help you with the topic, whatever you're talking about. It has prayer suggestions. It really, this is like a full-fledged, like, devotional. You can just do this and just be good. And I like the fact that it has the topics up top. So like you said, in case you have a day where you're feeling a certain way, just go to that straight to that topic. And if that's one that you go through more frequently, then you want to put a little post-it in that topic
And highlight it.
So okay, great. So all right, so we're just gonna get to it. If you guys are just joining us right now, we're gonna be talking about the taboo of mental health in the Black community. Get counseling, or is prayer enough? So before we get into that, I just want to give you guys a little bit of statistics about mental health in the Black community. So I wanted to start off with, first of all, in the United States of America, 13.4% actually identified as Black or African American. Out of that 13.4%, over 16% reported having a mental illness in the past year. That's over 7 million people. 7 million people who are identified as Black or African American have actually reported as dealing with some mental illness. Now, out of that 7 million people, 1 out of 3 actually get mental health services. And so that's a lot, you guys. So that means we have 4 or 5, maybe 5 million people walking around who have a mental illness and may actually know it, but decided not to get any mental health assistance for that. That can be very dangerous for other people. That can be dangerous for themselves. And the reason why, people think like, okay, why do you think people that look like us are not really trying to go to speak to a counselor or go to a psychiatric center or something like that?
I think that it's just in kind of how we was raised. I think, you know, a lot of times it was, you know, whatever goes in my house stays in my house. I've said it before. I've grew up with that being said to me. But the actuality is you need to go talk to somebody.
Right.
You know, you need to actually get it out. A lot of times, and that goes kind of with our topic too,
Mm-hmm.
you know, growing up in church and dealing in Christianity, a lot of times it was just like, well, prayer could fix it. I'm not saying that it can't,
No.
but a lot of times you need to go a little bit further than that. It's kind of like looking at a preacher or someone who preaches,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they're like in the spirit, caught up, they're preaching, sermon's good, but then when the anointing lifts,
Mm-hmm.
they're human like us, right? They still have to go home and deal with whatever issues those are. And we've seen that even in last year with the spike in suicides with pastors, right? Because even though they preached us happy, they still dealt with mental health issues.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that it's just in our culture, I think it's some type of a taboo, or people think like, oh, you shouldn't sit on a sofa, but why not?
Yeah. And it's just like a taboo, or it could be like, or a stigma associated with it, because like you said, you know, you're kind of raised to kind of keep your business to yourself, keep everything in the house that belongs in the house, and I think that might have been out of fear from our parents, like, because I know if we started telling people at school or other people about what might have been going on, they might say, oh, you know, DIFUS might come in, and then once they get in, they can never get out.
Yeah.
You know, they might take the children away. They might misconstrue whatever is said for it to be something more than it was,
Yeah.
which I'm sure maybe sometimes that might have been the case, but a lot of times it wasn't. A lot of times a lot of stuff might have been going on. But
I think
maybe,
that they just got a bad rap. I think with the Division of Social Services in regards to Child Protective Services actually got a bad rap. I think that's the problem.
Right.
I think when people don't understand what they do, and people just understand that they have a job to do. Some of them they really have hearts, they really care, they really don't want to see a family divided, but there's certain issues that need to be addressed. But I think back then it's the lack of knowledge and really understanding what they did.
Right.
So if all you know is they separate families, you're going to be like, don't talk about what's going on in my house, right? But if you understand that they have the resources, counseling, right, to help you process through issues that you're having in your home,
Right.
you would address it different,
yeah.
right? So
And I don't think I know their main goal is not to separate families. They want to keep everybody together, you know, and sometimes, you know, I guess maybe we only really hear about the worst case scenarios when there have to be, you know, taken out, screaming children out of the household, you know, but that's not like the everyday, all the time type thing.
Yeah.
You know, they, like you said, they do have lots of services that they can offer. And once you actually receive those services, everything seems to be better, they do leave the home.
eventually.
They don't, you know, so they're not going to be with you forever.
Yeah.
You know, they can offer additional counseling services. They can offer, you know, if you need like, you know, assistance with other things, like maybe some people, they might have had, you know, issue with DIFUS because maybe they're in between housing, or maybe the light bill got cut off for a little bit because of whatever happened. Life happens,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and I'm sure they realize that, you know, so they will do whatever they need to do to help you keep your family together.
Yeah.
That's the main goal, you know, but yeah, going into that, advertise for DIFUS.
Yeah. No. I'm not advertising for them. I'm just saying.
Okay, so I guess I want to talk about a little bit about my personal experience. I'm a counselor now, and I find that actually when I think of, like when I grew up, I never really thought that's something I was going to do, because I remember, I think I was telling Sancherise about this before, when I was a kid, I must have been elementary school, you know, my family and I, we moved to Scotch Plains from Newark, and it was a major culture shock for me, because, you know, I went to going from an all-black Christian school to like a all-white public school, and it was like a whole 180, and, you know, people treated you differently, or, you know, and, you know, it was I think it was kind of difficult.
Yeah.
It didn't seem maybe that way as I was going through it, but as I'm looking back, you know, whatever. But anyway, that being passed, so they had a group counseling group going on. I think it might have been 4th, 5th grade or whatever. And I was interested in joining, because not so much because I wanted to share my personal experiences, because I already knew that I'm not really going to talk about anything, but I just wanted to be nosy and hear what everybody else is talking about, you know, so I have my ear to the street. Is that the word? Ear to the street? Ear to the road?
Yeah, I don't know.
Ear to
Ear to the streets?
line? Anyway, my ear to something. But when I brought it back to my parents to sign a permission, I was like, well, they was like, what do you want to do this for? I was like, because I just want to, see what everybody else talking about. Maybe if I want to talk, if I wanted to, I was trying to figure out what they wanted me to say for them to say yes. But they was like, no, if you have something to talk about, you can talk to us, or you can talk to somebody at church. And that was it. They just shut that down. So I don't think I ever tried to do anything like that again. But but that was my initial experience with counseling as a child. But since I am in the field right now, I think I'm totally open. Like if I ever had kids and they ever saw anything in that they might need counseling, I wouldn't hesitate about getting them counseling.
Yeah.
I mean, I would try to vet out the person. I wouldn't have them talking to anybody because they could be talking to somebody who be teaching them crazy stuff. But once you vet that person out, then I wouldn't mind having my child talking to somebody like that. And of course, if something was emergency, like my kids talking about killing themselves, of course they would tell me because there is confidentiality. And I think that's another thing parents have a little trouble with. Like after the kid might be in counseling, they expect the counselor to tell them everything the kid said. But that's not the case. No. The kid, although they're not 18, they still have their own confidentiality. They still get their own, privacy. So they're not going to share anything like that. And you have to be okay with that. So,
yeah.
Where are we going with that? Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing, and I think that's another reason why a lot of parents don't put their kids in counseling because they want to know, and it's kind of like you can't know. You have to build some type of rapport. You have to be able to trust. Who you. First of all, you have to be able to trust yourself, that you raised your kid well enough to know that if something inappropriate is said, inappropriately done, that they will come to you and share it with you. That's number one, right? And then also just to be in a place to understand that, this person is the professional who was trained, and you have to be able to trust them in some type of way to see if progress is being made. And you can kind of tell by your child's pattern. You can kind of tell, just if progress, and if it's not, switch. There's not a problem. You don't have to stay with the same person. You don't have to keep going back to the same place. So I think that's like, when it comes to a child and your child needed counseling, that, it's nothing really wrong with it. It's really just to research it out. So
it's kind of like church hopping. Like when you're looking for a new church.
Yeah.
There's a church. I mean, if you got a church right here, you got a church across the street, you got a church down on the corner. There's like 20 churches on the block. So if you don't like that one, you just go next door and try that one.
Somebody told me that church was like a club that you gotta find the right.
You gotta
find the right fit. Now I don't know.
Yeah. You gotta find the right fit. I mean, I don't know.
Now I know a lot of private church people would be like, what? Like church hopping? Like what? But no, you really have to. That's a whole nother topic, right?
Word?
Wait,
don't know.
Yeah. Wait, that's a whole nother topic, right? that's a whole nother level. But I'm just saying, you have to.
We were looking for one.
Yeah,
I went to a lot of different every Sunday.
Find the right fit.
We stepped in some crazy ones too.
Yeah, I have to.
That's
a good another show. That's like one of those. I'm not gonna tell the location, but I just need to tell the experience. Right? I've seen some crazy things too. Woo, boy, I tell you, but yeah.
At any rate, another reason I think people are not so quick to go to counseling is there like you as a person of color. I know me personally, my counselor, it had to be a person of color. I mean, I just felt more comfortable. I don't know. I mean, some of the issues I was dealing with at work, made me feel more comfortable to have that. But there's not a whole lot of people of color in the counseling field. So it does make that difficult. If somebody else feels that way, like, oh, I only want to talk to a black person, or I only want to talk to a female black person, which even specifies it even more, or only a black male, it kind of like narrows your options.
I think too, like, not even just that. I think that it would be a very, like, a big plus if they did counseling and accepted insurance. Right? Because there's a lot of counselors out there who don't accept insurance. So then you have people who say, I want to go to counseling, but I can't afford it. Right? I want to go talk to somebody, but I'm not going to be able to afford it. Right? So, I mean, that's a whole nother thing in itself, because you have some great counselors out there, but they don't accept insurance.
Right.
Sometimes their pricing is not on a sliding scale.
Yeah.
And so it puts a person in a crazy position because, again, how can you find your perfect fit?
Right. Right.
So.
But I know when we were on your other lab, you were talking about counseling that you can get through your job with the
Yes.
EAP, I believe, right?
So a lot of jobs offer at the Employee Assistance Program, which a lot of times when they give you your benefits package, they tell you like, oh, well, we have this program for you. It's a free program. We offer it to all employees. And most people don't look into it.
This is true.
Because, like, when you read in the brochure, it talks about, oh, if you need help with childcare, you need help with housing, you need help with this. And most of the time, you don't even think about even calling it. That's not, like, a first go-to resource that you would technically call when you're going through something. Or you might feel like the information they're going to give you is just not really worth your calling. And then they don't really stress it at work. I've been in companies where they just don't stress it. However, if you're in need of counseling and your job offers it, I don't think people know that when you call that number, you're actually talking to a counselor right then and there, right?
You are.
So they give you the disclaimer. In most counseling sessions, the disclaimer is that if you're going to harm yourself, I have to report it. If you're going to harm somebody else, I have to report it. If you report to me some type of incident of sexual abuse to anybody 18 or older, I have to report it. Those are the three things that has to be reported. Anything else is all confidential, right? So they give you about an hour to talk. They get you to a place to where your mind is stable enough to where now I can give her referrals and refer her out. Not only do they give you referrals, they give you about 3 free sessions that your company have paid for. About 3 free sessions outside of them talking to you. And if you still in that time frame you can't find a counselor, you can always call them back and talk to them. So that's just one of the perks of the service. So then when you call them and you talk, and they give you a list of counselors that you could call out, you could screen, you could Google, you could, find out information about them. Google's a wonderful thing because you could read the reviews, you could see if that's really what you're looking for. And you could utilize that resource. So if you don't have the funds, if you don't, but you need to talk to somebody, at least you could get that initial break. Right. That initial break of, I'm able to vent, I'm able to talk to someone, I'm able to kind of get that out for right now. And then, you have a couple of days, or if you need to call back or whatever the case may be. But their job is to get you help and get you the help that you need right then and there. Right. And a lot of people don't utilize that. They don't utilize it at all. And it's sad, but some people probably don't even realize it, that's what it's for. Because
or that they even have it.
Yeah, they advertise like weird stuff about the Employee Assistance Program. They don't really advertise like, we offer counseling. And I think if it stated that, it would be like very, like people would be like, oh, because a lot of people, especially now, people have been home, they've been experiencing anxiety. Right. And that's just normal. Like, I've been anxious, I've been, anxiety, I'm depressed, I'm by myself, I'm lonely, I need somebody to talk to. Or they're dealing with their own personal demons that they haven't had to deal with because life was so busy that they just was moving. And now I have to deal with myself. How do I process that? Right?
Yeah. So. And not only do they offer mental health counseling, but also substance abuse counseling. So if you're having issue with any sort of, narcotic or, illegal substance or whatever, even legal substance, they can help you with that as well. And there's no limit. Like, I know some insurances, I don't know all of them, but I know a lot of insurances, they don't have a limit with how many counseling sessions you can get. Like, as long as after those 3 free ones, as long as you keep paying your copay, which may be between, $10 to $20 or whatever it is, you can go to that counselor for as long as you want.
So, sometimes it's free. I think now, depending on your insurance at your job, sometimes it's free. I know I went to a counselor through my insurance, my regular medical insurance, and I didn't have to pay anything.
I know with EAP, people who have the EAP program, they were doing no fee mental health visits between I think March and end of May. Okay. So yeah, they said you don't have to pay any co-pays, and everything at that point was probably video conferencing. Yeah, but yeah. So yeah, those are other perks they do during times like this. They make sure they take that into consideration, and they'll give people, breaks like that, which is great because they're actually, paying attention to what people might be needing at the time and all that stuff. So another thing, we talked about insurance, talked about that. Let's talk about how it relates to like a topic for today is prayer enough, or do people actually need counseling? Let's go back to that. So I agree. I know you said before, usually, if you're going through an issue, going through problems, church is usually the first place. I mean, if you're a Christian, that's usually the first place that you would go to. I mean, and it's acceptable by your parents to talk to people at church, to your pastor, to any ministers or the mother or anything like that of the church, and I think a lot of times this could be good, you know, because sometimes you just need to release something that you've just been holding on for a long time, and just need to like speak it out and maybe get some, not so much get feedback always for it, but just to have someone listen to you. Because I think a lot of times, you know, people feel as if they're not heard, they're not listened to, you know, and they, you know, it's like process something. You want to process it. So you want to talk to someone who cares about you, who has the same kind of, you know, ideas about things that you do, and that's helpful. But, you know, if you're somebody who's like diagnosed or maybe not diagnosed with like schizophrenia, you know, you might need a little bit more than a conversation with someone at church. Yeah, I mean, you are going to need, you know, you might need some prescribed medication. You're going to need some actual counseling to try to regulate through all those things going on, you know, and at that point, I think that, you know, I'm not saying prayer doesn't work. And it's always a thin line, especially when you're, you know, talking with, you know, it's like, what do you mean prayer doesn't work? You know, I'm not saying it doesn't work. Prayer can work. I'm not saying there's no limits on what God can do. What am I saying? I'm saying,
I get what you're saying. So for me, let me say, so we were talking about how we came about the counseling. And so for me, I went through a sexual assault, right? And, you know, the details of my assault, first of all, I was assaulted by someone of the same sex, right? And so you go through the process of grand jury, you go through the process of court. Now I'm dealing with anxiety. I'm dealing with, you know, the trauma, and you know, the everything, the nightmares, the everything, right? And you pray because that's what you're taught. But when I go to church and I speak to my leader, you can't relate to what I'm saying, right? Because all you could tell me is Jesus can fix it. But how? Because I'm dealing with this now. I'm not saying he can't, but like, how, can you help me process through this, right? Because I need to hear more than just the from you.
yeah,
Right? Like, like I need to hear more than that, you know? And so that's why I believe that people are gifted. Like, yeah, you have pastors out there who counsel, but sometimes you have to go a little bit further. Because sometimes, again, there is medication that's needed. You know, sometimes, and, you know, like for me, I was on depression medication at first when I went through my assault, you know, and that's kind of even with the book. Like, I went through all of that, right? I had to get through the clinical part of what I was going through, right? Because it wasn't always easy to release it.
right.
At the time. You know, I would pray, I would cry, God, how long? I would pray, I would cry, God, how long? So for me, it went hand in hand. Because as he's dealing with my spiritual man and building me up, I still had other things that I had to deal with. When I left the church and I wasn't there anymore and I didn't have somebody praying for me, what was I doing at home? Who was I going to talk to at home? And at midnight, when I needed to talk to somebody, yeah, I pray, I talk to the Lord. But then during the day, in the middle of the day, when I'm facing crisis, what do I do?
Right.
Who do I talk to help me process through it without just giving me a or just handing me a scripture? There's techniques out there. It's, you know, people that are trained to teach me coping skills,
Right.
how to cope through my trauma,
Yeah.
how to get through, you know, certain things. And that's why my book says process, right? Because it's a process to it. I can't tell you that reading my book you're going to be healed from your trauma. Totally. No, it's to help you through the process of,
Right.
because it goes hand in hand. I would never exclude prayer out of that being your go-to, but what if it's somebody who's a non-believer
This is true. You have to.
or a babe in Christ who really doesn't fully understand how to give it to the Lord, right?
Hey, there's veterans in Christ who still have a hard time giving things to the
Totally.
Lord. So
totally
you know,
yeah.
So yeah, I agree. You know, having someone you could process something through.
Yeah, it's just to help somebody, to help you process through. You know, process through it.
Yeah.
Someone who, because again, you have counselors out there who have specialties.
Yes.
So if I have a drug addiction, right, or if I'm addicted to something, I have a substance abuse, like, and if you don't understand addiction, how can you help me process through it? You gonna just tell me that Jesus could take the taste away, and I've been drugging for 20 years, and when I stop, I get the shakes. So, you know, if I stop, I'll go through withdrawal. What's the underlying issue that caused me to get there?
Right. Because there's always an underlying
Yeah, what's
issue.
the underlying
Like,
issue?
why
How
is
can
she
you help
taking
me
the
get to
drug?
the why?
Right.
Without
Right.
just telling me to stop. Because you're going to tell me to stop, I'm going to go to something else.
Yeah, it's like putting a Band-Aid over, like,
Yeah.
you know, you cut your foot off and you're
Yeah.
putting a Band-Aid over the part where
Yeah.
it got cut off.
Yeah, it goes hand. I was in a seminar a few months back, probably around December, November, that talked about deliverance and counseling goes hand in hand. You can't have one without the other.
Right.
Not all the time. Because what's bringing me back to that same thing? Which I say a demon. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what's the underlying issue that's bringing me back to that?
Yeah.
And so for us, I think that's why we struggle a lot in our community, because we don't want to talk about those issues.
Because we're embarrassed, I
Yeah,
think. We're
why though?
embarrassed.
You know, it's kind of
I
like
mean-
why?
I mean, we're embarrassed. We don't, you know, we don't want people to know our business and to
Yeah.
think differently about us. Like,
Yeah.
'cause, right.
Yeah, it's like, why?
Shame.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dawn.
I'm sorry. I'm just gonna get up to you in case somebody make any comments.
Yeah, you know, because you really don't, because you, especially if you really are used to hiding everything, and you put your mask on every time you
Oh.
go to church, you put your mask on every time you go to work. You know, you're the smiley one, the funny one. Everything rolls off your back.
yeah.
You're really easy to get along with. You know, you are whoever around you wants you to be. So you know, you're good at reading people, because
I
you
went
know,
through
okay, right? You
I
know,
went through that.
I
And
went
that
through that
mask
too.
is something.
You know,
It's heavy at times too, because how do I I'm in front of you and I'm smiling and everybody's like, oh, you're so strong, and you know, and then I get home and I'm crying. I'm in the car and I'm crying, and I can't process through what I'm going through because I'm ashamed to talk to somebody else, because you view me as being a strong person. So I need to be able to show my weak side somewhere.
yeah.
Because then
Yeah.
you're going to crash. That's why people commit suicide, because they get home and they feel like they're alone. I have nobody to talk to. I don't want to live anymore. I don't want to deal with this or whatever. And then what? And then what? And then what? Because they're ashamed to talk about it. And there's nothing wrong with sitting on somebody's sofa.
Nothing
Okay,
wrong.
you can't sit on their sofa, really. Not a lot of places. But you could video conference. You could talk on the phone to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's nothing wrong with speaking to somebody who's professional and
Definitely.
getting that type of help if you need it. You know, so
I agree. So yeah, so I think that, you know, the answer to that question about, you know, is prayer enough, or do you need to get counseling? I think you're right. I think it's good to do both. Definitely do both, because depending on the severity of the trauma that you might have been through, and there's all kinds of, and it's not just about, you know, one person. You have two people, they're witnessing the same murder, suicide, or whatever. They might have watched their, you know, mother shoot their father or whatever, and one person is traumatized by that, and they have a hard time getting on, but the other person, you know, they're okay. But the same event happened, so it's like everything affects people differently, and you can't just assume, well, that didn't bother me, I was fine. But you know, your sister or whoever who lived in the same house as you is having a very hard time, and then they got addicted to the drugs, and then they started prostituting themselves, and then I'm going dramatic right now, but you know,
but it's the truth.
but it happens,
It's
because
true.
it's all how you perceive something, it's all how you view it and how you internalize it. You know, because sometimes, you know, people can say something to you, and some people take things really personal, but it wasn't even directed at you like that. But because you feel a certain way about yourself, that just hit you in your heart, even though they wasn't even trying to do that, because you're just so used to thinking about yourself negatively, or maybe you have a low self-esteem, or maybe you know, had a bad experience in childhood where everybody always pointed out all your faults, and now you just want to attack everyone who even looks like they're going to do that. You know, it's I think it's really about, you know, how you internalize things, how you perceive what happened, and it's not so much about the event that happened, it's about how you view it and how you deal with it.
Yeah.
So, you know, going to the counselor, learning these coping skills, learning how to self-regulate, which means, like, if you are at the supermarket and you feel yourself having an anxiety attack, how can you calm yourself down without going to a full-out anxiety attack and have to go to the hospital every time? And that's another thing about people in the Black or African American community. We have lower rates as far as not inpatient, outpatient stuff, which is like, you know, going to counseling and that sort of thing. We have lower rates in that, but we have higher rates in inpatient services, like being committed to a, you know, psychiatric ward, being committed to a substance abuse facility, being committed to a hospital overnight for something. We have higher rates in that area, and why? Why do we have lower rates in just the simple counseling, but we have higher rates in the other thing?
Because people don't address it. when it's something minute, when it's something is small.
Right.
It's small and it's, you know, and so what happens is it becomes from a small issue to layers of issues because you don't deal with the smaller issue, you know, like I'm dealing with it this right now, like, okay, when my father passed, I immediately went into grief counseling because I felt myself feeling like I just don't care. You know what I mean? So my I don't care attitude would have gave me other issues because my thought patterns was kind of like all over the place, right?
Yes.
So then other issues would have came on top of it. So imagine that's what a lot of people go through. They go through something, they're experiencing it. And so instead of saying, let me go get help right now, right? They'll start drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And then now that I start drinking, now I'm ruining relationships because now I have this alcohol problem, right? And now because of the alcohol, I'm displaying anger.
Right.
Now because of the alcohol, I'm lashing out because I can't get that fix that's going to help me numb the issue that I initially had. Mm-hmm. So now it's more issues. Now I've killed other relationships. Now I'm by myself. Now I'm about to commit suicide. Now they're committing me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right when you're at the edge.
Right when you're at the edge, when you could have just dealt with it in the beginning.
Yeah, because at the beginning it might have been something that would have took maybe 6 counseling sessions, and you would have been okay. But now you're at the edge. You're gonna have to be in counseling for a couple months, maybe longer.
Yeah.
Because there's so much stuff that happened since that's been also traumatic for you, and then you kind of learned a new behavior that wasn't healthy. Such as drinking,
a habit.
Yes,
now you have a habit.
You know, so it's like a domino effect, kind of, you know.
Yeah.
And everything just builds and builds, like a snowball effect. I think is better, you know, builds and builds and builds. When it started off as a pebble snowball, you could have been fine. You could have solved that thing like that. But you know, or us as you know, being black people or an African American community or whatever, we're so used to. Well, not all of us. Don't let me put everybody in the box. But a good amount of us are so used to thinking that, you know, if we put ourselves out there with counseling, people might think we're crazy, you know, that we fail to, I don't know, do anything. I think we just like, okay, well, if we're not going to do counseling, I guess we're not going to do anything. We're just going to see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It'll go away.
You know, maybe, right.
That's like, it'll go away. It'll just vanish.
You know, when I saw my mother or my father go through this stuff, they just took a couple of shots and they was fine. Or if I saw my auntie, when she gets upset or when she got anxious, all she did was, she locked herself in a room for a couple of days, and when she came out, she was fine. But those aren't healthy habits. Yeah. Well, you know, a lot of these habits I think that a lot of us have, we learned it from people when we were kids, what our parents were doing, our guardians, our aunts, and whoever raised you, grandparents were doing. And I think sometimes it takes you into adulthood to realize, you know what, maybe that wasn't the best thing that they were doing. Maybe we should have tried something else. Yeah. You know, and there was a story, someone said, it's like since they were a kid, they always saw their mother would cut off both ends of the turkey and she put it in the oven. So every time they prepared it, they would cut off both ends and they would season it just like she did. And like 30, 40 years of doing the same thing, and they asked their mother, it was like, why do you always cut off the ends of the turkey? Why don't you just put it in there? She was like, oh, well, my pan was too small. But I've been cutting this turkey for 30 years. I thought that was part of the process. Like, no, you don't need to cut it. Your pan was too small.
Oh, wow.
I thought that was so funny.
Oh, wow.
But you just
that
been, following
though.
the same thing for no reason. You just assume,
that's the way you're supposed to do it.
And I think that was like an interesting example. Someone said that, always ask. And we're probably going to another thing, but for kids. Now, I know in the black community, we discipline our children a certain way. This might be another show. So I don't know if I'm going to get into it. But I think communication is very good, you guys. Communication is key. Even if you're going to do discipline like that, you always should say why, how, set the rules in advance. Because sometimes, you're a parent and one day you might feel as if, yesterday your kid was, I was talking to my sister Shakura earlier about this. No, I don't know who I was talking to. Talk to somebody. No, it wasn't her. It was somebody else. I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and it was like, one day your kid, they're on the computer all day doing whatever. The next day you wake up, you know what? You're on the computer too much. I'm gonna take away all your computer privileges for today. But there was no conversation. No, okay, you can't do that today. So after today, make sure that, and then so now your child is being dysregulated because now you're unpredictable. Like, oh, well, I don't know if I should be on the computer or not, because today mommy was like saying it was good, but to the next day she said it wasn't good, so how am I supposed to be? Or one day you could be, they come to you with a problem, and you're like, oh, this is great, thanks for coming to me. Let's try to work this problem out. But the next time they come to you with a problem, you're getting snappy. It's like, oh, why are you even coming to me? I don't have time for this. Get out my face. So now they don't even know how to come at you. Actually, I know who I was talking about, and if she's watching, she knows who I'm talking about. I'm not gonna put you out there, but yeah. But yeah, so I think it's important for a parent, if you're going to be consistent with your child, so that they can know how to be around you, and then again, how to be around other people. And so they're not going to be that kind of child that's tantruming every time you go to the supermarket, because now they know that if they act a certain way, you're going to give in. It's being consistent. And I'm going all over the place, so I'm going to stop talking.
But you can pull that back into, because that could go right back to the issues, underlying issues, because a parent, sometimes they're acting like that because they're going through something that they haven't dealt with, right?
Right.
So the next thing closest to them is their child. So if I'm confusing all over the place, I won't get counseling, I won't get help. How can I really effectively? I went to a parenting class. So I was like, I did this such and such. Anyway, so I went to this parenting class years ago, and they said in order to be a better parent, you have to be a better you. In order for me to be a good parent, you have to be a better you. How do you become a better you? You become a better you by dealing with the issues that you've dealt with. And like you said, a lot of things are learned. We do it because it's learned. Doesn't make it right? No. Sometimes it don't even feel well. Like, I was cutting the turkey because I thought I was supposed to, but all I needed was a bigger pan and I would have had more meat. You know what I mean? And so that's what it is. We tend to do things that we've learned, we've seen. I was really the type of person, me personally, to like, if I'm going through something, I cut everybody off. And I try to process it by myself. And then I'm isolated for a long time. I don't take calls. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to nothing. Was that healthy? No. Because now I'm dealing with myself. And you have the good days, your bad days. You're in the bed. You don't want to do nothing. You don't care. You get up. And that's really depression, right? But I'm thinking that that's healthy. Because my mother taught me to build up a wall. And you put up a wall, and you cut everybody off, and you process your issues, and then you come back out, and you assume that everybody should understand, and all your relationships should still be intact.
Right.
But if I would have just talked about it to someone, then I wouldn't have those other layers of issues. Now I got to process through. Now I got to restore relationships.
Yeah.
Now I have to restore other things when I could have I'm having this problem and I don't know how to process through it. So instead of me trying to process through it on my own and probably really never really coming to full understanding of it, if I would have just reached out and spoke to someone, I probably could have got through that process a little bit faster.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I was very similar about, if I have an issue, I kind of like close up, and because I don't want to hear anything anybody else. I didn't want to hear what anybody else wanted to say. I just wanted to focus on what I thought about it and what I felt about it, and I just wanted to maybe sometimes sulk. Sometimes I was involved. I just wanted to sulk inside whatever I was upset about, or sometimes I don't know. I just didn't want anybody to know what I was dealing with, or I just wanted some by myself time. But I think by doing that, you're right. It kind of like has you sit in your emotions, whatever that is at the time, and sometimes that definitely can't be healthy.
And I think that people should know too, when you go to counseling, the biggest thing to understand, they don't tell you what to do, right? They really just give you thought-provoking questions, and you're really just talking out and processing everything. So it's just another, and because you don't really know this person, it's not like a bias type of question. They're asking you things to get you to thinking so that you can make your own decisions, so that you can process through it. And they may say, well, may I suggest something, and kind of throw it out. Just kind of like coaching, like being a life coach. It's the same thing, but they kind of help you work through it. And if a regular counselor can't help, and they think you need a pill or you need something else, then they'll refer you out to a medical clinician. But I mean, for me, I'm just really talking about mostly like regular counseling, where you could just kind of sit down and have somebody help you process through whatever you're going through. So
yeah. And I think the biggest thing about going to a counselor for me is that they're not there to judge you.
Yeah.
Like, you can say whatever the heck you want to say, and they're not going to look at you any different. They're not going to feel any different, or give you a weird, funky face when you say it.
Like,
everything. They're very calm. They're very collected. They're very accepting.
Yeah.
And this is so that you can trust them, so that you feel more comfortable telling them things that you need to tell them. So, I'm all for it. So, and for children, people, if you don't have insurance for your children, there is a thing out there called Perform Care. Of course, people have multiple experiences with it, but they do. There are services that set you up with other services in your area, and if you have insurance, they'll set you up with people like that. If you don't, they'll get you something to help out with if you're having issues with your kid. If you notice something different about them that you haven't noticed before, like if they're like the most popular kid in school and now they're like shutting themselves in a room all day, that's not their normal. If they were the most politest kid in the world, now they're cursing you out every 2 seconds. That's not normal.
And some schools offer free services.
They do.
Some schools offer free services where they'll bring, depending on what a child is going through. I know when I went through my divorce, I put my son in counseling, but my youngest son, but what it was is it was a group of children in the school who were going through the same thing with their parents.
Nice.
So he didn't feel alone. They met once a week after school, sometimes, or like during school, like one of the whatever, and they would come and they would all sit down. So then the kids felt like I'm not alone, and through that, my son developed great friendships other children. But it was a free service. So sometimes if you reach out to a guidance counselor, because I love guidance counselors, me personally. I do. I think that they do a great job, especially when they're really into their job, their hearts is in it, right? So that's what they're there for. And a lot of people don't utilize that service to say, well, let me go to the guidance counselor. A lot of people think of guidance counselors, especially in early child development, they don't really talk to guidance counselors, right? Because they're there, but they don't really talk to them like that, right? Except for like high school, you start dealing with them because of colleges and stuff like that. But they're trained for that. They're trained for those reasons. I remember Jermaine used to be like, he used to be upset sometimes, like somebody, upset him. And he'd be like, can I have the pass to the guidance counselor? and she'll call me and be like, oh, your son got a pass to come. But I was glad that he found his outlet,
That's
know what I
good.
mean, and utilized that part. But I say that because a lot of times if you say, well, I'm a parent and my child is going through something, well, where can I go? And a lot of cities offer it, some counseling places offer free counseling, but I would say if you have a child who's at need, who needs some type of services, I would definitely go talk to your guidance counselor.
Yeah.
Because they have those resources.
This is true. And
They
I
have
should know
those.
that because I am a school counselor. Yeah, I am a school counselor for high school, so yes, I do actually. I'm really cool with my kids. They're always sitting up in my room, which sometimes can be an issue because they're not in class when they're doing that, and sometimes it's just because they want to just shoot the breeze. But even in those times, I still try to keep them for a little bit just to gauge, because sometimes they can come in with their happy face, but they're not really happy. So even if they're in just coming by to stop, I always try to say how you're doing, do a check-in, stuff like that. And if it is something serious, like I said, I am able to give referrals. I do contact the parents if it's like something that, like you said, like hurting themselves, hurting somebody's hurting them, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's definitely a resource. And sometimes, if you just need to talk to someone like once a week, just whatever, school counselors, guidance counselors are there for that. They can do that. They can help you with that. They can check in on your kid. Even if they are receiving outpatient services, they can still do follow-ups with the school counselor if they need to check in. Like you said, if someone's bothering you, instead of you lashing out, you get the pass to go to the school counselor. And that's definitely one of the reasons why we're here. So I think that's, and I do think sometimes we're underutilized in that way. But yeah, I think that's definitely could be some part of someone's like
It's just one of
regulation
those
plan.
services that they don't promote, and
Yeah.
that's so sad.
Yeah.
It's just
And they have them in elementary and
Yeah.
middle schools now. What grade is he?
He's in
high
high school
school?
now, but
Oh,
he
wow.
utilized. But elementary school, he was like in second grade. Like, I'm going to the guidance counselor.
I don't remember having a guidance counselor.
Yes,
in
they
elementary
do.
School. I mean,
Yes.
when I was in elementary school, I
but
don't
you
remember.
were.
Do you
Yeah, I had one.
I don't remember.
But you don't use
Did
them.
we have one?
Yeah, there's
There
always
must have
one.
been one.
Yeah, there's always one, but you don't. They don't talk like. Okay, this is the guidance counselor, but nobody uses like. I think if you don't have like a IEP, I think that's why you don't really. Because a lot of times they're more involved with that.
Yeah, back in the day, I think that was
Yeah.
like the main thing. Nowadays, they're more involved like
Yeah,
with character
but-
education.
But I
and
think that probably was the stigma to say that they were more involved with that. I think if you really needed to talk to one, that they were available, but that's what they were mostly being utilized for.
Right.
Because again,
Right.
back then, that's coming up. Who want to talk to who? Like, no, that's why you're home. That's why we're going to be at church, and at
Right.
church, that's who you're going to talk to. But yeah, so I think that they, they were always there. We just never really fully utilized them to their full capacity. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. What time is it? Okay. So what else are we going to talk about to wrap it up? Because we're almost at an hour.
Are we really? Any questions on there? Comments?
Someone, Michelle Nicole said, I see a panel discussion happening. But we don't have any comments per se. There's a lot of people saying that that's true. They're enjoying it. This is good. Mental health is just as the same as physical health. So
It is.
you have to take care of that as well. And yeah, they're just thanking you. This is good information. What's happening? But no questions.
Okay. That's cool. Lots of comments. Great. I'm glad there's people watching. Let me see. I'm just going to go over my notes one more time. This is stuff I usually cut out when I'm recording, me looking at my notes.
Okay. That's the benefit of being live, right? Candid camera. Candid camera.
I think I did say everything I wanted to say. Okay. Well, I guess I want to thank you, Saint Teresa, for coming on today. For your idea of actually having this show. This is definitely, I never did a live before, although you do lives all the time. So this is definitely an experience.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoy and if you guys are not subscribed to her YouTube channel, you have to give your information out so everybody can subscribe.
Please subscribe. My YouTube channel is called Good Morning Mrs. Robinson. I'll put it in the links whenever this is done so that you can click on it and get on there. And I usually do things every week. I do, mindfulness talks. I also do mindful munching with Mrs. Robinson, where I try to do a couple of healthy eating meal prep type things. So feel free to check any of those out as well. And again, Saint Teresa's book. Awesome book. I need to get her to autograph this before she leaves me today. And, just in case when it's worth like 3 times as much or 10 times as much, I will have my, personally autographed copy, and I will lock it up somewhere.
If you're watching the show today and you inbox me directly to purchase a book, I'll give it to you for $10 today.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I do ship the book out. So if you inbox me today only. For watching the show,
right,
and you want a copy
only.
of the book. Yes, today only. And then I just launched my new business entitled Releasing My Secret.
Okay, and what is that about?
So Releasing My Secret is actually, it's because I've been dealing with traumatic experiences and emotional things, and I'm actually moving my books over under that company, as well as helping people to release their secrets. So my motto is oh Lord. So it's getting people to speak out in regards to opening up their voice and really voicing, becoming free from voicing whatever their experiences is, releasing the issues that they're
So what's the motto?
They're coming through. Listen, I just wrote it out.
Oh, okay.
It's going to, yeah.
Oh, I thought that was.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
No.
It's cool.
Oh,
Wait, today's just been so long, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
I can't say
So all of that's going to come out. I set the business up. Everything is actually going to be out this week, like with the motto, the logo, the everything.
Is the coaching going to be under that, or that's
my
gonna
coaching
be
is
inspired
under
by you?
Inspired by You.
Mm-hmm.
So right now I do. I'm a certified trauma recovery coach, right? So to help people process through after the counseling and after all the other things to get them past their stuck point. So that's where my coaching is actually focused on, because I've been through so much trauma in my life that I came through. And it's kind of like once you've come through it, once you get the counseling, once you've come through everything else, it's kind of like, okay, where now are we going? Like now I have these goals and I want to implement these goals. So as a coach, I'm there to walk through that with you. I also coach and mentor. I have a mentor program for small businesses, people who are looking to start their small business and kick it off the ground. So I'm like a small business one-on-one on a budget, right? Because some people can't afford right away to start, their business, but they want to become an entrepreneur. So I help with that in that area, that capacity. And then, so that's the Inspired by You side. The Releasing My Secret side is really dealing with Christianity and mental health. And really being able to release those things that we tend to suppress because we're afraid of how we will look, how, you know, somebody would view us. But how can you really advance and move forward in life and accelerate if you're suppressing issues that you're not dealing with? Again, it's the snowball effect.
Right.
So it's kind of like, I want to start a business, but I had a domestic violence issue and I don't know how to submit or deal with, you know, the opposite sex or, you know, something like that. So it's kind of like, you know, working through those and processing through that and just normal things that we kind of go through. So it's dealing with mental health and the Christianity side. So, yeah. I'm really excited about that. So look out for that because that's my official launch will be coming out. And then we did a book called Releasing My Secret. I too was a young mom. So I have a couple of mothers who are actually writing to be a part of this great project.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That
who
sounds
are
exciting.
actually teen moms. So the moral of their stories is not to really talk about all the struggles that they went through, but it's to kind of encourage the moms who are young moms that they could too come through. And I also have some children of young parents writing as well because their expectation level of what a parent should be is different as opposed to, so when I had Marquise, I was 15. He was in school and those parents were like in their 20s, right? So the things that they was doing, I wasn't doing because I was too young to really even wrap my mind around and comprehend. But he still turned out and grew up well despite the obstacles that he faced as having a young mom. So it's just to kind of address those two areas of the things that people
When's that
do.
coming out?
That is due to be out in July. So some of the stuff is
This
with
next month?
Yes.
Oh,
So-
wow. Okay.
So some of the things are with the editor, and you know we're working on everything else that's going on to put it all together. But it's due out by the end of July.
That's great. I'm excited. I think I'm really interested in that. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah. So yes.
All right. Well, I guess we're gonna close it out.
Yes.
Unless there's anything else.
Any last comments? Any questions? Anybody out there?
Someone said need help in listening. It was Monica filming.
Needs help in listening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But other than that, that was our last comment.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dawn, for doing the backup back there. Did you want to come over and say hello? She does not. Okay. All right. So anyway, thank you everybody for watching.
Thank you guys.
Hopefully we might do
Good.
something in the future, but have a great rest of your weekend and